For now, though, let's shift focus on to this. So do you have a copy of Truth to Power, My 3 Years Inside ESCOM by Andre de Ruyter? Not a physical copy, a digital one, that is. If you received it on your WhatsApp, there's a couple of things that you need to know. That's because Penguin Random House, South Africa, the publishing house of that book, has issued a warning to people who are circulating a copy of that book on WhatsApp. And so what is it that you need to know? Stephen Hollis is a partner, a trademark attorney specializing in copyright, and he's with Adams and Adams. Stephen, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. And so for somebody who has a copy and says, well, it got forwarded, I'm on a group and I found it on the group, what do they need to know before they click forward?
Hi, thank you for inviting me, and hello to your viewers. I think, first of all, something to bear in mind is that content piracy is a massive, massive problem and a real risk, a real pervasive scourge that affects the livelihoods of creators and the authors whose works we enjoy to read, and the movies we enjoy to watch, and the music that we enjoy to listen to. In today's digital environment, where it is possible to, with a click of a button, create a near perfect copy, if not a perfect copy of a work, and to immediately distribute it across globally, across online networks, makes it incredibly challenging for the creators of those works and the producers of films and music and the writers of books to make sure that they can actually control the commercialization of the works and earn from it. Now, if you cannot earn from your works or earn fairly from your works, what incentivizes you to spend the years sometimes it takes to write a book, to produce a film, to actually invest money in those projects? So the main thing to do is to actually understand that content piracy harms the broader creative industry. So it's not just about legalities. It's also, as the message to the general public is, it's your duty as a South African citizen to support our authors and to not make use of pirated copies. Buy the book and support the author and their publisher. Now, if you were to simply receive a pirated copy of a book and you were to consume it and you were to send it on via WhatsApp or make it available online, you are guilty of a crime. There's various pieces of legislation that you can fall foul of, mainly the Copyright Act, and also there's other pieces of legislation that deals with the dissemination of information through electronic networks, like the Electronic Communications and Transactions Act, and more recently, the Cyber Crimes Act. Minister Robert Lamola last year, at the launch of a new initiative called the Partners Against Piracy Initiative, pledged government support to assist the private sector and assist South Africa's creatives in this fight against content piracy. And we also need really buy-in from the general public to know that it's not just wrong to do, but you're actually taking money away from the author who actually wrote the book, or, like I mentioned, the musician who wrote the song that you enjoy listening to, or the folks who made the movies that you want to see. Mm-hmm. So the more money is actually diverted away from the rightful owners, the worse off our creative industries are, the less investment there is into new content production projects. And also, a lot of these times, the money that from pirated activities and from counterfeit products actually find its way to criminal syndicates, and they use that money to further other illegal activities. International studies have shown even certain instances piracy can fund acts of terrorism. So do the right thing. Don't click and forward on delete it and call the person up or send it to you and say, why are you sending this to me? This is not the right thing to do. Let's support the creative process and creators in South Africa rather than cutting them off from earning. And the publishers and authors have a real interest, a real vested interest in this. Because if you think about it, it's so easily a product that is put in the market can be made available online freely to access to anyone who's willing to do that. And for every person who accesses it, consumes it, that person won't go out and actually now buy a copy now, would they?
So Stephen,
and in the process, yes.
Yeah, sure. So essentially, it would be relying on goodwill, right? So that people do not forward it. So I'll call Stephen up and I say, Bud, you may get into trouble, so delete it. You perhaps didn't know, but in the absence of goodwill, right, how then do you prove legally that I sent it to you? So I'll send it to you via WhatsApp, and then what happens? How then do you prove where it originated from? How do you legislate something like that, or prosecute, rather, something like that?
Yeah, it's a tricky area. So one will need to see to what extent the rights holders would want to go to investigate this. Now, if you consider a similar example that happened at the beginning of the 2000s, so it's a while ago, you might remember the Napster file sharing online system, where people were sharing music via this network. And we saw in the United States people from all walks. It doesn't matter what financial means. Some were housewives without a job. Some were students still at university, being handed down massive awards of damages against them for distributing works. Now, in South Africa's terms of our Copyright Act, if you distributed a work that you know or you reasonably should have suspected or known to be an infringing copy of a work, you can be held liable. You can incur criminal liability and fines of 5,000 Rand per act of infringement. So if you send it to 10 people, that's potentially 50,000 Rand and more. And potentially jail time, 3 years per act of infringement. So this is a serious issue. It's not, it feels like it's an easy thing to do. Actually, it is an easy thing to do, to just click send to the next person. Have you seen this? But it's got real serious implications for the authors and the rights holders that created the works. And it's got real serious legal implications. In some instances, it may be possible, depending on the seriousness of the infringement and the damage that's being done to the rights holders, for a further investigation to be done with the assistance of technology companies to say, can we determine where these messages were sent? Now, in South Africa, we've also got protection of personal information, papaya, so that will also need to be looked at. But it's not inconceivable that an investigation could be had which could involve the assistance of technology companies to the extent that some of these messages might be traced, and to see where and when it was actually delivered and by whom. And this happened in the United States. They've got a different legal setup, but internationally there's precedence for these kind of investigations to go quite some length. It depends how far the rights holders want to go. But certainly people should take heed. And like I mentioned, not only because of the legalities, but because each of us, every time you say no to consuming a pirated product, and you go out and you actually pay the subscription fee to view content online, or you buy the book, you're actually putting a portion of that money into the author's pocket or into the publisher to help them invest in a new project. Maybe you'll enjoy to read another quality book, or maybe you want to see the next movie, the follow-up to the one that you support. So you're actually supporting the creative process by paying the legitimate fee, and you are siding with the criminals out there if you don't. It really is that simple.
Well, Stephen, I think that one is simple, right? Like in terms of seeing, especially when you do it legitimately, or when you buy something legitimately and it goes to the creators. What we're interested in is what you were talking about when you forward pirated content, it then goes to the underworld, or you're supporting, or the underworld essentially making money. How do you support the piracy holders, if you will, for lack of a better phrase?
Well, if you were to distribute pirated products and use it yourself, and you become part of the let's call it part of the illicit trade movement, so to speak. So you actually proliferate, you become yourself an extension of their distribution network. So in that way, you support their activity. So even though you might not know who they are or how they profit from it, what you do is you enable the further distribution of the illegal content, and in that way you form part, willingly or not, wittingly or not, of a larger problem. South Africa studies have shown that South Africa is unfortunately. South African consumers and people, we count as one of the top 5 countries in Africa insofar as consumption of pirated goods is concerned. And that tells me that somewhere along the line, we need to have a real change in awareness as to who do I damage, who do I harm? I harm the author, I harm the people who invest in the project. And in that process, you actually cause also, it creates a sort of a barrier, because if you were somebody, if you were an author and you released a book and the next day the book was all over the internet and people were downloading it for free, would you really be incentivized ever to write again? Maybe you will go to another country and become a citizen there and write a book where they've got proper copyright laws and enforcement remedies to protect you, right? So in South Africa, our laws need to be updated. Our Copyright Act is in the moment in the process of being updated. There's a copyright amendment bill before Parliament. One of its main objectives is to update our law to meet the challenges of the digital age, including content piracy. Unfortunately, I also don't have good news for you there, because the bill has been highly controversial. And one of the biggest issues and concerns expressed by the legal fraternity and by the private sector to government is that the bill does nothing really for online to combat online piracy and content infringement. We saw last year that MultiChoice Kenya achieved a big success in Kenya, after Kenya updated their copyright law recently to make provision for what is called a site blocking action, so that the rights holders can actually effectively block user access with the cooperation of an ISP, so that people can't access the likes of Pirate Bay, for instance, that we know is an obviously infringing website. In that case, in Kenya, MultiChoice was able to stop the infringing of sports broadcast rights over 141 websites. Showing illegal broadcasts of sports, things that a lot of money is paid for to secure, like the English Premier League and La Liga and so forth. So it's also we saw recently in Nigeria, their government recognized the huge problem that Nollywood has. You know, their film industry, which is the largest employer, I believe, private employer in Africa. They employ more than 1 million people at any given point in time. But because of piracy, the way that it's so pervasive in that environment, when a producer creates a film, before there's a theatrical release, it's already out there. And their government has recognized it's a problem. They've implemented a site blocking action. You'll see them starting to do, you'll see rights holders asserting their rights. So unfortunately, in South Africa, our government didn't heed calls for site blocking to immediately be introduced, but hopefully there's some more time left before Parliament settles on the final version of this bill for that to be included. But it's a broader problem, it's a global problem, and we'll only win if we've got support from government, from the private sector, and most importantly, the person out there.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good to chat to you. Stephen Hollis is a partner trademark attorney specializing in copyright at Adams & Adams. More news for you in a few moments.